I'm a firm believer that in order to reach a confident and conversational level of Spanish speaking, you actually need to speak it. I don't believe in exclusively using passive learning techniques in order to be able to speak Spanish. Now, fortunately, there are lots of ways in which you can practice speaking Spanish, but because of all of the options that exist, this leaves a lot of learners confused and wondering, well, what is the best way? What is the ultimate best way for me to practice speaking Spanish? So we're going to talk about that today. We'll look at several options, do some comparison, look at some pros and cons of each so that you can determine what is the most efficient path to take you from hesitant to conversational and confident. Comencemos, amigos. Hola mis queridos líderes del lenguaje, bienvenidos a otro video. Si es la primera vez que tú y yo nos estamos conociendo, te doy la bienvenida. Aquí te ayudamos a mejorar tu español y poder hablarlo con confianza y también crear una rutina de aprendizaje irresistible por medio de las historias y las conversaciones auténticas. Si eso te parece interesante, suscríbete para no perderte de nada. Alright guys, I want to preface this by saying that it is extremely important that you always have a solid input routine, okay? Never neglect your listening and your reading because you have to input the language in order to have anything to output, all right? But in this video, we are going to be talking about how to improve your speaking. So we're going to do this by looking at a few options. We're going to look at one-on-one classes, small group classes, the large traditional classroom, language exchanges, conversation clubs with no teacher, common interest groups, speaking with friends, family, or just the casual encounters that you run into on a day-to-day basis, or practicing with yourself, by yourself, okay? Now, we're going to be giving everything a point system based on how authentic of a conversation you can have using these methods, how much correction or guidance that you have from someone who knows what they're talking about with the language, how much personalization and flexibility exist with this particular method, the cost, the reliability, and how motivated you are likely to feel by using a particular method. How have I come up with these numbers? Through talking with and observing a lot of Spanish learners over the past several years. However, even so, the numbers are of course very subjective. You have your own personal circumstance. You may notice that certain numbers that I have put here on the board do not apply to your particular circumstance. We'll in fact be talking more about that at the end of the video, but it's always helpful to have some guidelines, especially if you're just completely stuck and you don't know what to do right now to practice your speaking. This is where you can start. We're going to be rating everything from 1 to 5, 1 being the worst and 5 being the best, okay? So, how authentic of a conversation can you have one-on-one with a teacher or a tutor? I'm giving this a 4. Why? Because, obviously you're two people, you can go back and forth speaking, right? That's a pretty good imitation of what it may be like in the real world with you speaking to everyday people. I've taken off a point because, of course, it is not perfect. Some learners have the tendency to get used to only hearing that one person, that specific voice, that specific accent, and it is difficult to understand other native speakers. And of course, the teacher is doing their best probably to slow things down for you to speak very clearly. That's not something that you're going to run into in the real world. Therefore, I have taken off a point. It's not a perfect method. Corrections and guidance. A 5, okay? You're literally working one-on-one with your teacher or tutor. Now, here we are talking about someone who does have a high knowledge of the language. You could also have one-on-one sessions with a person who's not necessarily a professional teacher, so they may not necessarily be able to put a name on the mistakes that you're making, but they usually will at least be able to tell you how to say it correctly because it just doesn't sound right or it just doesn't sound natural. So this could be really a 4 or a 5, just depending on if you're working with a professional teacher or if you're working with someone who is able to correct you because they have a high level of the language, be it a native speaker or a fluent speaker, but maybe couldn't necessarily tell you exactly what you're doing wrong. Okay, flexibility, personalization, this is a 5. It is just you and that person. So if you do not feel like you have complete flexibility to come to class and say, this is what I want to work on, you need to switch up your teacher, because if you have a teacher who comes with their lesson plans, wants to work from a book exclusively, and you have other things that you're wanting to learn first because they're more relevant, you have to have the right to do that. This is literally one-on-one classes. So this category should be a 5. If you don't feel like it's a 5, have a conversation with your teacher or choose someone else. Cost, we're going to give it a 1 because this is naturally going to be our most expensive option. It's just you and the professional that you're working with. Obviously, this is going to be our costliest option. Reliability, a 5. Generally, you are paying for lessons. If you are showing up for the lessons, generally your teacher is going to be showing up for the lessons as well. Motivation, I'm giving this a 2 because what I've seen so often, what has even happened to me in my pursuit of learning other languages, is that since it's just me and that person, if I have flexibility to cancel, if I have flexibility, just to say, oh, I just don't want to do this right now, I totally can. No one is necessarily waiting for me. There's not a system of planned out lessons that I'm worried about missing because I know that I can just pick up wherever we left off. So your motivation to actually make those appointments and keep those appointments may be lower than some of the other options that we'll be looking at. All right, so that is one-on-one. Moving on to small group classes, and how big a small group is very subjective, but so we're just gonna leave it at that right now. Okay, small group classes. Your opportunity to have authentic conversation is about a point lower than the one-on-one because there are more people. You're going to spend more time listening than you are speaking. Of course, in the real world, that can happen as well. If you're in a little group of people, obviously some people are speaking and you are listening. However, when you are wanting to quickly improve your own ability to speak, especially if your ability to speak is already lower than your listening comprehension, you're going to want to maximize the opportunities that you have to do so. So we've only given this a 3. Your opportunities for corrections and guidance are still there because you have a teacher there in the group. However, it's obviously quite a bit lower because there are more students in the class to also attend to. Personalization and flexibility is a 2 because with traditional small group classes, they can't be personalized so much. Okay, everyone has to kind of be on the same page in order for everything to flow properly. So we only have a 2 as far as personalization and flexibility, which could be an issue if there is something very specific that you're wanting to learn right now. Reliability, we're going to give this a 4 because generally if this is a well thought out small group class, it's going to be on a certain time, certain day, every week. We've taken off 1 point because since there is more than one person, you may get more comfortable with some of the other students more than others. They may show up one day, they may not. And so it's just not quite as a reliable and consistent of an experience as our one-on-one classes. Motivation, I'm going to give this a 3 because since it's a bit higher than with the one-on-one, because there usually is a lesson plan. So if you don't go to class, you're probably going to miss out on something. Maybe you can watch a recording later that could help a little bit, but you're not in that motivational setting with other people. And also people tend to be more motivated when there are other people working on the same thing as they are. So we do have a 3 there as far as motivation. What about a large traditional classroom? Okay, this is kind of what people may be used to who have studied Spanish in school and university. We're going to give this a 1 as far as authentic conversation because even though there should be opportunities for speaking practice, of course, these are going to be very limited. Even though at times during class you may be divided into groups, which can give you a bit more opportunity for speaking, the authenticity of those conversations tends to be lower because in order to give grades, the school really does have to push a lot of grammar and has to push the acquisition of a certain vocabulary. Everything is very structured. It has to be because you have to leave with a grade, right? And so the opportunity for authentic and natural conversation about subjects that are perhaps interesting to you is usually quite limited. Your opportunities for corrections and guidance: you do have a teacher. You can ask questions. That teacher can help you. Definitely not as personalized as one-on-one, but the teacher is present. As far as personalization and flexibility, for similar reasons to this one, we've given this a 1. The school definitely has its lesson plan laid out. It's going to be very difficult in a large group to personalize everything to what the student is really looking for. So we've given that a 1. The cost, we've given a 1, assuming that these classes are being taken, for example, in a language school or university. Of course, if we're talking about kind of public school learning, then this doesn't add any additional cost to the rest of your schooling. But we've given this a 1, just taking into consideration that these classes may be held like in a language school or a private university that you are in fact paying for. Reliability is a 5. Your classes are on certain days and times, and it's usually always going to be like that without fail. Motivation, a 2. Because of the structure, because of so many students, the lack of flexibility, you may or may not be able to maintain your motivation high enough to actually take what you need from that class and apply it to the real world. A lot of times people who are in these types of classes end up working hard for the grade, but not working so hard to be able to use this language in authentic conversation. And that's just because of the nature of the typical large class program. Now, next we have language exchanges. So what we mean by this is when you have found a language exchange partner. Let's say that person wants to learn English, you want to learn Spanish, they're a native Spanish speaker, you're a native English speaker. And so say that you meet for an hour and you spend half of that time speaking in English in order to help that person with their English, and half of the time speaking in Spanish so that you can receive the help that you need with Spanish. So this can be fun. This can be an interesting type of arrangement, and a lot of people have had success with it. We're going to give authentic conversation a 5. And it's interesting that we've given it a point more than one-on-one, just because you are talking to someone who is actually not a professional teacher. The person's not going to be so focused on correcting you in very specific ways. They're just a real person. They're just a natural person helping you have an authentic conversation. So we're going to give this a 5. You can really have quite an authentic conversation with a language exchange partner. Their ability to provide corrections or guidance, we're going to give that a 3, because if they're a native speaker or a high-level speaker, then they're going to hear when things sound off. If you have questions as far as why it's not said that way, they usually are not going to be in the best position to be able to help you with that, as they don't have that knowledge that comes from studying the language. That's not necessarily a bad thing. You can very well learn a language without understanding the why behind everything. In fact, I suggest that you stop worrying about the why behind everything. It's only going to slow your progress. As far as flexibility and personalization, we're going to give this a 4, because it is just you and one other person. You can definitely tell them, this is what I'm working on. This is the type of conversation that I want to have. We've taken off a point because you are forced to spend at least half of that time speaking in your own native language to help the other person who's learning. You cannot spend the entire time only focused on you and your goals. So if that seems like a waste of time for you, if you don't have time for that, if you want to be efficient, this is not going to be the way to go. Costs, we're going to give it a 5, because oftentimes these are free. It's simply an exchange of value. So we're going to give a 5 to cost. Reliability, this is where it all goes down. This is where almost every single week I have learners saying, I have tried language exchanges, I have tried them, I cannot find anyone who's reliable. I find someone, it seems like we click, they don't show up anymore. Or I can't find anyone in the first place. I'm not comfortable with anyone. Some language exchange apps are pretty much dating apps at this point. It's hard to find someone to speak to that is going to be reliable and keep it focused on language, okay? Motivation, we're gonna give this a 2, because it's just, again, really easy to just cancel, no, I can't meet today, both for you and that other person. Motivation may not be as high. I'm not giving it a 1, because if you find someone that you really click with, then you're going to be more motivated to meet that person, but still it's just all too easy to get distracted, other things take priority, and you don't end up doing your language exchanges as you want to. Conversation clubs with no teacher. So this is just kind of, let's meet up. We're all, learning Spanish. Let's meet up and let's just chat. Okay. Well, we've given authentic conversation a 5 because literally that's all you're trying to do. You're trying to just meet, have authentic conversations about whatever. Maybe it's just very casual, or maybe someone has chosen a theme. So we're going to give it a 5 there. Guidance and corrections is a 1. Usually there's no one there that has a high knowledge of the language enough to be able to really guide you, really help you with corrections. Of course they could if they were at a higher level than you, but still this is going to be very limited in this very casual type of setting. Personalization, flexibility, this is a 3. It just depends on what type of group we're talking about. Has a theme been chosen, or can you talk about whatever you want? This is just can vary so widely, so we've gone in the middle here with a 3. The cost, we're giving it a 5 because often, just like language exchanges, these are free. It's just someone that says, hey, let's get together, let's chat, okay? No one's charging anything. Reliability is a 2. I wanted to make that a 1, but we're gonna give it a 2 because there are some casual situations like this that go on for quite a bit of time. But so often what I see is that someone starts something like this and the motivation is high at first, and then person number 1 doesn't show up to the meetings, person number 2, person number 3, and it just fizzles out pretty quickly. Motivation, we're going to give it a 1 because of how casual these meetings are, because no one is actually expecting everyone to show up to it. It is very easy to simply stop going to your scheduled meetings. Now, from here on up, we've been talking so far about situations in which language learning is the goal, okay? You and whoever else is involved has the goal of learning the language or helping you learn a language. Now, common interest groups, I'm referring to things where, for example, you have an interest, a hobby. Maybe you're a gamer, okay? And so you decide to do gaming with Spanish-speaking people. So you're having like just this natural back and forth gaming-related conversation as you are doing that. Or you like to crochet and you found a local meetup group of Spanish speakers, and there's maybe a class, maybe a teacher who is teaching crochet in Spanish, and you're with other Spanish speakers, and purely through doing something that you enjoy doing anyway, or that you want to learn to do that has nothing to do with language, you are also picking up on the language and participating in the language, okay, through a common interest. We're gonna give this a 3 as far as authentic conversation. You absolutely can have authentic conversations with everyone who is present, but normally conversation is not the actual focus. The focus is whatever you're learning, whatever you're doing. No one's actually trying to help you learn Spanish. You're learning Spanish just as a consequence of what you're doing, this other activity, if that makes sense. Corrections and guidance, we're gonna give it a 1. Of course, you know, at any point you could say, am I saying this correctly? Or someone may correct you if you've said something totally wrong. But again, the focus is not on language, so no one is actually worried about helping you along with your Spanish. No one really has time for that anyway. They didn't come to teach you the language. Personalization and flexibility, a 1, because you're there literally for a specific purpose. It has nothing to do with language. So you can't just decide that you would like help speaking about gardening in Spanish when you've come for crochet. Cost, we're gonna give this a 3, right in the middle, because this could go anywhere from free to a more expensive class that you're taking. It totally depends on what kind of situation we're talking about. So we've just put that right in the middle. Reliability, we're going to do a 2 because usually these are short-term common interest groups. So we've given this a 2 because although it may last a while, maybe you're taking something for a month or so, or talking with certain people for a little while because you like to game with them or something. Again, there's not really any commitment to show up, and eventually whatever you're doing, the program that you're in, may simply end without the possibility to just renew it. So we've given that a 2. Motivation, we've actually put it all the way to a 5 because I'm assuming that you're doing something that you are very interested in. So the motivation to be there and learn or do the thing that you're doing could be high enough to actually make all of these lower scores irrelevant. Maybe this is the only way that you've found that you can actually progress with the language because you just love this other thing that you're doing so much and you love doing it with other people. Now we have speaking with friends, family, or casual encounters. Again, this is something where language is not the actual focus. You may just simply have Spanish-speaking friends. You may have Spanish-speaking family members. You may live in an area where there are other Spanish speakers. Okay, that's what we're talking about. Authentic conversation, the opportunity for authentic conversation, 5, okay? You can't get more authentic than literally having authentic conversations that are not even planned, right? With your friend, with your family member, with the person on the street, with your neighbor. You can't really get more authentic than that. This is probably your ultimate goal as far as authenticity, right? So we're going to give that a 5. Corrections, guidance, we're going to give it a 2 because, again, you could receive corrections from someone as you're speaking, but oftentimes it tends to happen with friends and family. As long as they understand you, they won't actually correct you, okay? Sometimes that's to not be rude, or sometimes they just get used to how you speak and you're communicating fine, so there's not really the opportunity to improve. And definitely with strangers on the street, I mean, if they understood what you said, they're probably not going to be actively trying to help you improve. The opportunity for personalization and flexibility, we've given this actually a 5 because if you are brave enough to just go out there and talk to the Spanish speakers, then you can choose any type of situation that you would like to. If you want to improve your going to the market Spanish, go to the Mexican market, or maybe you live in Mexico and so you go to any market and improve that kind of Spanish. You want to improve your going to the bank Spanish, go to the bank, and so on and so forth. You are choosing who to speak to according to what you need on a day-to-day basis. You really can't get more personalized than that. Cost is a 5 because this is free. You're talking to friends, family, and people on the street. No one is charging you for that. Reliability is a 5 because, again, there are always people. So even though you may not be speaking to the same person all the time, if you are trying to be completely just authentic and free with your Spanish, you can't get more reliable than that. Motivation is a 1. Why? Because so often it happens that even though learners are surrounded by Spanish speakers, sometimes the spouse is a Spanish speaker, sometimes the best friends are Spanish speakers, many who live in Spanish speaking countries and still go and search out the English speakers because of fear, because of lack of confidence, because they don't actually have to speak Spanish. Maybe they can get by with the English, or maybe they make an arrangement with their friend, spouse, whoever it is, to only speak Spanish, and it doesn't happen. This has been the classic case with my husband and I. We had made this goal that we were only going to speak in English so that his English could improve because I already spoke Spanish. It just didn't happen because life is life. Quick communication is necessary in order to just get through the day. And at the end of the day, not everything can be a language lesson. We default to the language that we both speak. And to this day, 13 years later, his English could be a whole lot better. So motivation, we're going to give that a 1. I talked about that in this video that I published quite a while ago, and since then the comments that have poured in from people saying the exact same thing has happened to me. The exact same thing has happened to me. I've been married to a Spanish speaker for 15 years and I cannot speak Spanish. I'm glad to know I'm not the only one. All right, so we're going to give that a 1 for motivation. Talking to yourself or practicing with yourself. This can be, for example, you're taking a self-study course, you have prompts to form a sentence and speak it out loud, and you're just doing that, right? You're working on it by yourself. That's still an excellent way to practice. Or you're walking around the house and you are, trying to describe, now I'm going to the bathroom, now I am brushing my hair. Even though that can sound weird or funny, it is such a good way to practice and to start to just think in Spanish, just describing what you're doing or talking about what you're going to do tomorrow, what you did yesterday. Practicing with yourself is an excellent way to practice as well. As far as authentic conversation though, we're going to give that a 1 because even though you can imagine what the imaginary other person could say back, you're not actually in a conversation. So it's really nice for getting a hold on the vocabulary that you have been trying to acquire and really solidifying it. But as far as the back and forth conversation, there's no one else to have a conversation with. So that's a 1. Corrections and guidance, it is you and yourself. So you can always look things up in a dictionary and self-correct, or just, record yourself speaking, go back and listen to it later and notice, I messed up here. I'm better now than I was before, which is a great thing to do. But we're really speaking about in these categories corrections from someone else. So this is going to be a 1. Personalization and flexibility, you're always with yourself at all times. So you can think about or talk about whatever you want. That's definitely a 5. Cost is a 5 unless you are charging yourself. Reliability is a 5 because, again, you are always with yourself. Motivation is a 1 because it is completely up to you to do this. No one else is pushing you. There are no other classmates. There was no teacher that you made an appointment with. Absolutely, it is only you, yourself, and you. You could want to, you could not. And there may may not be any external motivational factors. You have to pull entirely from the internal factors, which could be difficult for some. What we're gonna do now, guys, is see what total we get. I'm quite interested in knowing myself what the totals are going to be. I haven't really planned this, so stick with me for just a moment and I'm going to tally this up and we'll see what the winner is. All right, guys, the results are, let me tell you what we have. I have written the totals and also ranked them from highest to lowest. So in first place, we actually have friends, family, casual encounters with 23 points. In second place, we have 22 points for one-on-one. In third place, we have language exchanges with 20 points. In fourth place, we have a tie between small group and actually talking by yourself with 18 points. And number 5, we have 17 points for conversation clubs with no teacher. And our final category, number 7, is this large traditional classroom with 13 points. So this is interesting, okay? This is interesting even for me to see. As I was recording this video, I forgot to mention 6th place, which is common interest groups. I want you to notice a few things here. Everything is beneficial. Why? Because nothing got a 6. 6 is the lowest possible points that we could have gotten. Nothing got a 6. What does that mean? Everything is beneficial. Practicing your speaking is always better than not practicing it at all. Everything is better than doing nothing. Also, nothing got a 30. What does this mean? There are no perfect options. There is not the best option. And I want you to understand that even though for this example, we have ranked these, this is going to vary wildly according to your personal circumstance. What if your goal in learning Spanish is to pass an exam and you need to do that in a couple of months? Well, then this one-on-one, even though it's not first place, that becomes an extremely attractive option. A one-on-one with a teacher who has a high knowledge of grammar, who can give you those corrections immediately and perhaps is specialized in passing that particular test. All of the other options become irrelevant, completely irrelevant. What if you know that the only way that you can be motivated is to be with other people? You cannot do one-on-one. You must have classmates. In that case, the one-on-one becomes completely irrelevant. You have to do something else on this list and be able to have the motivation that comes from being in a group setting. What if you have found that you are not as motivated by the language itself than you are with this other thing that you can find other people to do with you who happen to speak the language that you want to learn? If you spend a lot of time in a certain hobby or in a certain activity and you can combine that with language learning, the common interest groups may be the only way that works for you. Interestingly enough, this is the category where I had the most opportunity to speak, okay? And it's ranked number 6 here. And then a lot of those people became my friends. So I was working a lot in the categories that we have ranked number 6 and number 1. Okay, that's a really big disparity. You need to get really clear on your goals, what you're trying to accomplish, the time frame that you have to accomplish those things. What are you ultimately wanting to do? All of that makes such a difference. So hopefully through this detailed analysis, hopefully you've been thinking about your own circumstance, okay? Maybe agreeing or disagreeing with these numbers, whatever it is. What I want you to do is to have thought about your circumstance, and that is the only way that you would have been able to come out with what is best for you. I will mention that taking all of this into account, and one of my programs, Camino Spanish Story Club for upper beginners and intermediate, we have added a conversation club in which we have tried to combine the best of a lot of these factors. What have we done? Well, we've combined the motivation that comes from being with other people with the personalization that you get from a teacher, with the intimacy of a small group and not a large group. Regardless of how many people meet, we divide them into breakout rooms so that they have the maximum amount of opportunity possible to actually speak. Breakout rooms of only 2 or maximum 3 people allows maximum opportunity for practice. And the thing is, even though you're practicing with someone who is also learning the language, what we've seen is that this is helping our learners relax and improve their fluidity because they are comfortable speaking. They're comfortable trying to now piece together all of the knowledge that they have and bring it into something that is coherent and can be understood by their speaking partner. Every week we have different themes that are extremely practical to our learners so that there is that motivational factor, but also you are not left to your own devices. We have at least one teacher making rounds through the breakout room so that we can provide whatever help is needed, be that in the form of vocabulary that is missing, sentence structure that is lacking, sentence structure that can be improved, helping out when you guys get stuck so you have that guidance. It is working beautifully. Our Caminos member Agnes says, Erica, girl, class was great. I thought I wanted to stay with the same person the whole time. Boy, was I wrong. I had the opportunity to practice with so many different people. This is exactly what I need. Thank you for organizing this. I wish I could attend both days, but I'm so very happy that I can at least attend today. You're just the best. I praise God that I found you. Thanks, coach. Later, she also wrote, I just want you to know that you and the team have opened up such a great opportunity for language learners to get together and ask questions over and over. That is the key for me. The preparation that goes into getting my thoughts on paper takes up 75% of my time right now, but I know that will change as my vocabulary grows. So true. And you can also see an interview that I did with Agnes here. I'll link the video up here in the cards. Love you, Agnes. Angel says, some people find it hard to believe that I am shy and probably your perfect definition of an introvert. Today, not only did I spend an hour talking to perfect strangers who now feel like friends, I did it in Spanish. The confidence boost is amazing. So yeah, today's Caminos Conversation Club was a win for me on so many levels. I'm wishing everyone just as many, if not more, wins on this language journey. Thanks, everyone. So awesome to hear, Angel. Bob says, I enjoyed the CCC. This is the Caminos Conversation Club, and I'm anxiously awaiting the next opportunity. Meeting new motivated students is a great idea. I will do my best to attend next time. And Linda says, I loved today's chat. It was marvelous, and I am grateful that you encouraged me to attend. I love the program and the teachers, Misael and Erica. Wow, you have all of the pieces to learn Spanish that I have been looking for. Bravo. It has been so beautiful watching how the learners forget that we're there, forget that we're even watching them, and start to flow with conversation and meet each other and just create friendships and just flow with what really sounds like an authentic conversation, okay? And just flow with their Spanish. It's actually exceeded my expectations when I created the program. If you would like to know how you can join us in Camino Spanish Story Club and have a complete curriculum to help you all the way from that upper beginner to that upper intermediate level that you can work on your own, and then multiple opportunities per week to take what you're learning to practice through speaking with real people and having real support and guidance, then simply click on the link below. I would love to meet you and help you with your Spanish inside of Caminos. That's going to be all for today, guys. Please leave me a comment and let me know, how are you planning on practicing your speaking? Maybe what are your top 1 to 3 options of what we've gone over today? So leave me a comment. I will be reading every single one. And if you would like to understand how you can combine stories and conversations for really authentic learning, then I also invite you to go download my free guide, ericarealanguage.com/stories, so that you can see how all of that can work together for really natural, authentic language learning. That's all for today, guys. Until next time, don't forget to go out and live your new language today. Bye-bye.